This is Seasons of Discontent with your hosts Rick Snyder and Matt Combs.
Welcome to Seasons of Discontent, Season 11, Episode 15, brought to you by Rick Snyder's Washington across social media. And I'm Rick Snyder.
And I'm Matt.
And we're back discussing all things Washington Commanders because we don't ever talk about anything else. So, anyway.
Well, hey, to be fair, baseball's over. The Capitals just started. And do we have to mention the Wizards?
My first PR release I get from the Wizards for the season, because I get them every day. Injury update. God. Okay. So that's all I need to know about the Wiz. But anyway, all right. So we always pick the game first because that way people don't listen to the rest of the show. Washington 7.5-point favorites. I like them big. Washington minus 7.5. I'll take 30-17.
I think you and I are in agreement this week. I know we were indifferent on the Ravens game. As we talked about between shows, Jaden Daniels on the sideline at the end of that Ravens game had a look in his eye that I'd never seen from a Washington quarterback. He was pissed. He was not happy. I think, unfortunately for the Carolina Panthers, they are going to feel his wrath. Yeah, I'll say Washington 34-20. I'm kind of feeling the same thing as you.
What's the totals on the game? You looked at it by whatever it is.
I'll look it up.
Whatever it is, go over, because I think they've done the total over 5 straight games. Because bookmakers haven't quite caught up to this offense, I think. It was close last week. They had to kick a field goal at the end to go over, but I would say probably go over. And if I have to have Washington score more points to do that, then so be it. This game is one of those classic trap games that in the past they'd lose. First off, in the past they would have lost to Baltimore 40-3 or something like that. But I can't tell you how many times I saw them when they had a decent season going, go out and play some, big underdog on the road and lose. I don't see that happening this time. I don't see Carolina having anything, man. They've become the worst franchise in the league, and they're welcome to that title.
Okay, so real quick.
Yeah.
The line has actually moved. It opened at 7.5. It is Commanders minus 8.
Ooh, I still give the 8. What's the total?
51.5.
Whew, boy. I go over anyway, like I just said. So I'll make it 37-17 to make it over. That's a lot of points. I'll give it that. Yeah. You got to think, can Carolina score?
And realistically, I mean, Vegas's money is on Washington. It's minus 425.
Yeah.
Money line. Oof. I don't think we've been that big of a favorite in a long time. This is all new territory this season. It just none of it makes sense. But
if they get 10 points or something down the road, then we haven't seen that in a long time.
No, and that's the thing. I mean, you're right. This is the typical trap game that you come off of a hard-fought loss to a team that is probably going to end up in the Super Bowl, and then you come in home and you lay an egg. I don't see that. I just don't see it this year. There's a fight in this team that we haven't seen under Rivera and Shanahan and Zorn and all those other coaches aside from Gibbs. There's just a fire in them that I haven't seen in a long time.
Probably the most since Schottenheimer.
Yeah.
Which was, 2001.
Yeah.
How long ago that was?
He was fired because Dan didn't like him.
Which is interesting because Quinn's not a real high intensity guy.
No.
Have you seen Ted Lasso?
I've never watched. I know the premise, but I've never seen it.
I had talked about this before, but I think he speaks in that kind of tones of real optimism. And Quinn one day said, "Yeah, I got it on him, but you don't have to be a jerk about it." And so it's interesting there, that fiery. But they start every practice with some Paris Island type drill anyway. So you got some guys like Ertz and Eckler that are leading this team that are, balled out players. So that's been a good thing for them. Their D-line, I don't see where their D-linemen were leaders on this team. They're quiet kind of guys. Payne, Allen really isn't the guy that leads them, and he's gone now. A lot of guys, especially defensively, are role players. I mean, Bobby Wagner should be the guy probably leading this team, or Louvu, one of the two.
Well, and
Uh,
that's what I was going to say. From the clips that I've seen that the team has released from the locker room, Luvu is your vocal leader. He'll lead them in the Samoan haka or whatever it's called, and Bobby Wagner is seeing that's what we talked about all season so far is Wagner, Ertz, and Eckler. Those are your veterans that have come in here to kind of mentor this young team and to still prove that they've got what it takes to make it in this league. Um, but I think Luvu is that hype type of guy. We always talked about Terry's kind of a quiet, reserved guy. I think Terry is just relishing in the fact that he is the quiet. He's producing on the field, and that is showing his leadership as to where, yeah, I mean, Luvu is probably your locker room presence. And let's not shy away from the fact that Cliff Kingsbury's got a little bit of swagger to him. Like I've seen him in the locker room. He's got a little bit of swag, but I also think that, we've talked about it in the past where, a player's coach. What is a player's coach? Dan Quinn is a player's coach. All of his players. I mean, when you and I questioned the hiring from day one, as soon as it was made, and every former player that had come out and talked about him was like, oh, he's going to succeed. He's going to do well. He's going to do well in Washington. He's a motivator, a leader. We're not going to see it on the sideline, but he is a leader of men, and he is a player's coach, and look, we can't shy away from winning cures all. Look, they're winning. This team is winning. We haven't really seen them go through, the 2, 3, 4 game losing streaks that we saw under Ron. So of course they're all still motivated, but I think having a guy like Quinn and him being a player's coach, and let's not shy away from the fact that also how many ex-head coaches are on this staff.
yeah.
There are former leaders littered up and down this coaching staff.
How many college guys were team captains? I think everybody they drafted was a team captain in college.
Yeah.
So I remember that. It was like one of those really weird things.
Yeah, and that's, we talked about with Ron. Ron looked for a character guy. That's why he took Jamin, because he was raised by a military family and this and that and this and that. Yeah, every GM's going to have their type of player that they want to draft, but it's just Adam Peters' guys. Yes, they're captains, but they came from big schools and they're used to this. They're used to this winning.
Yeah, let's say they get to 6-3 at so-called midseason now. And that's right when the trade deadline is. I don't really see them making a move. At 6-3, you're thinking, okay. I mean, listen. They were 7-1 once and didn't make the playoffs. I remember that under North. So you never know. In the second half, it'll be a little tougher. But I don't see them really mortgaging the future at all, even if they get to that point.
Yeah. Who do you got them losing to?
I don't know, but I will. It's not maybe Chicago. That's a toss-up game.
Yeah, Chicago's got a strong defense, and they got playmakers everywhere.
Yeah, so I mean, you don't come out and play your best game every week either. So
I could definitely see them losing to the Steelers too, but
yeah, that one there. I mean, so that gives me a thought about the fans. Okay, so the fans were there for the last home game, which was against the
Browns.
Because Cleveland didn't bring any fans on that. Carolina's not going to bring any fans, but I think that maybe locals will finally start filling the stadium up some. I mean, they did the wave the last game, which Grant Paulson said next to me filmed, and it did like 160,000 views because nobody's seen it before. So, but when Pittsburgh comes, now we see who controls the stands. Last time Pittsburgh came, I think it was like 90% Steelers.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe they get it down to 50-50 or something like that.
Yeah, and they were 11-0, and we beat them. Let's not forget about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just Steeler fans. There's a lot of Steeler fans in the area because they're, it's not that far away. So they'll come down.
I think the games, honestly, the home games that I'm interested to see are Eagles and Cowboys, because the Eagles are so-so right now. Yeah. They may turn the corner, but there's a lot of issues with the head coach, and there's a lot of issues with the offense not really clicking. I mean, they only put up 20 points on the Browns. But the Cowboys, it seems the Cowboys are on their way down. Obviously, I know they're going to get some players back. Michael Parsons is not playing and such, but I'll be interested to see the fan bases show up to Northwest Field for those two teams and see what kind of 50-50 we have there, because it's always been dominated by those two teams' fans.
Right. And those 4 games are going to decide whether this team makes the playoffs.
Correct.
Got good. If they go 2-2, but most times they've been 0-4.
Yeah.
In these situations. So I could see there's always a lot of Cowboy fans. You know, they open the prisons and let them out. I guess I don't know. I just love Cowboy fans that come to like training camp and wearing their Cowboys gear. They just do that to bother people. You know, it's one of those people where you like don't look at them. They're just looking to bother. Yeah, Eagles fans same way. I think they can beat the Eagles at least a split. Although I always say it's the weird games of the year. But those are where you see the progress made in the fan base, how much better. There wasn't a lot of red up in Baltimore, but there weren't a lot of seats available. And the seats that were available were crazy money.
Yeah. There's a smattering of Commanders fans in the stands. You can see them on TV.
Yeah, you can see some, including that terrible video of some Ravens fan beating up on a couple guys. And yeah, he'll miss a few games after this, I think.
Yeah, he's going to be watching those from a prison cell probably.
Yeah, that was pretty crazy on that one. So, I did have down here about Quinn being maybe Ted Lasso, and I don't say that in a bad way, because and obviously Quinn knows the sport versus Ted Lasso didn't know anything about soccer,
right?
But the key is he knows Ted Lasso knew players as people, was always positive, was always looking for, never worrying about the negative, and Quinn's very much like that.
Yeah.
I mean, he doesn't really. Somebody asked me the other day, are you out in public at all? And he's like, nah, not really. Maybe gas up my car, that kind of thing. He's not at the grocery store. He kind of laughed. He said, next time I go to the grocery store will be the first time, because they're doing 100-hour weeks. So they're not really out in the public to get a feel for that. If they listen to sports talk, it's for the 10 minutes they're driving into work early in the morning. So I don't even know if the junks are on at that point.
Yeah, he's probably listening to the replay.
I listening to radio before 6 a.m. is pretty austere. But Quinn's just sort of enjoying the ride and not paying attention to anything. Players are looking at social media more than they should. But things have been good, so it's okay right now. I mean, Jaden talks about it, he sees it. Most of the time, they always would say, I don't look, because it stunk and you didn't want to look. I mean, I don't like looking either when I have.
I'll say this, the one thing about Quinn, too, let's not forget what happened in Atlanta. He has the stigma of 28-3 still on his shoulder. He has that chip on his shoulder that this is his second chance. This is his chance to erase that 28-3 chip on his shoulder. He's got something to prove.
Yeah, I mean, if he goes 10-7, that's almost like NFL Coach of the Year. Now, they won't give it to him because they'll give it to somebody who made the playoffs. That's just how it works. But and I don't even know who that is. It's been a weird year. I haven't really been able to say, here's the real hierarchies in the NFL yet. I mean, obviously Detroit's looking really good on there, and Kansas City looks vulnerable. I would say that. Houston's looking decent. I mean, Houston and Detroit are kind of the models for the Commanders.
Mm-hmm.
Finally going up. And I talked about it on my videos this morning, Rick Snyder's Washington, that an old high school coach, when I was my first year, 1978, had a team they took over, had never won. And he had some really good players, and everybody thought he could win the state championship. And he said, listen, you can't go from the outhouse to the penthouse in one season. You got to learn to win. I got to teach them to win this year and then maybe next year. And sure enough, he got to the region finals and blew a game. Everybody was mad.
But yeah, and it's no coincidence that those two teams, that's where they first went shopping for head coaches. You remember they wanted Ben Johnson. They interviewed the defensive coordinator from the Rams or from the Lions. And then they also wanted to interview the offensive coordinator for the Texans.
Right. So, I mean, I think they got the guy they were meant to get in the end. It
Yeah.
wasn't a choice, but I think he was the right choice. God, I said that about Rivera.
And I'll defend Rivera till the day I have no breath. Ron Rivera was the right pick at the time. Ron Rivera was the grown-up in the room to deflect away from the cheerleader scandals and the Danny scandals and the Bruce Allen stigmas and all this stuff. Ron was a respected guy in the league that came in and told the children, hey, we need to clean this place up. Did he botch a lot of things? Yes. Obviously, his player personnel selections were not good. And, whatever kind of hand he had in the name, along with Jason Wright, those two guys were just brought in to clean up the stigma of this team. Now, Dan Quinn, the stigma is kind of gone because Harris is in and, all this stuff, and they're winning and they got the head coach and everything, or the right quarterback and all that stuff. But Quinn is still an adult in the room for a pretty young team, if you really think about it.
Yeah, I would think about I think I've covered 12 coaches, the franchise, and just looking back, like Norv was the right pick because he had just been offensive coordinator of 2 straight Super Bowls. So, on there, and then Marty was a great pick because he had a track record too, and he was available. So Schottenheimer was the right one. Spurrier was a stupid pick. You don't go into college for a guy like that. In 5 minutes with Spurrier, you knew it was a dumb pick.
Spurrier was the guy to win the papers. He was the guy to win the press conference.
Yeah, well, not even that. After a while, we kind of figured out a goober. But
within the first 10 minutes on ESPN, oh my God, Steve Spurrier going to coach the Washington Redskins. That was a headline grabber. That's all it was.
Yeah,
all he wanted to do was come here and play golf.
By Osaka, we all knew this was a disaster. First preseason game. And Zorn, we all knew what a disaster that was going to be from the get-go. And then he went 6-2, and I was sitting there going, my God, is this an idiot savant that we lucked into?
No, yeah. Clinton Portis ran his legs off that year.
I mean, that was so wild. I mean, and Shanahan I wasn't a big fan of, but he had a track record, and it ruined him here, and that's why he's not going to get in the Hall of Fame. What happened here? Gibbs, well, I mean, I never thought I'd see Gibbs again back. That was pretty crazy. I give Danny credit for that. Gruden was kind of I wouldn't say that was the best pick out there. He wasn't too bad. He got interfered with so much.
Yeah.
That I kind of cut him a little bit of slack. And
but Gruden had a track record as a good offensive coordinator when he was with the Bengals.
And he had some decent record overall.
Yeah.
He didn't too much.
Yeah. If Gruden was able to coach, now you take that John Gruden, obviously, or Jay Gruden from that age, and you put him with Harris as owner, I think he would succeed.
Yeah. I mean, so it's always been kind of weird to look at all these head coaches come through and guys that they didn't get. Like they really wanted Fossil, and Fossil turned them down.
Yeah. And that's why they had to go with Zorn.
Yeah.
Zorn was brought in to be the offensive coordinator.
I mean, there's I can't imagine if Danny was still around, none of this would be happening.
No.
It'd still be disaster world. So I'm grateful for that. If nothing else, you're now watching the league grit its teeth and admit that Washington's in the league and has to
people that they've had on TV that had to admit that this team is good. Aikman, Romo, guys like that, it's got to eat them up.
Yeah, it's kind of fun to just watch.
It is.
And next year, there's a rumor that when it's their turn to pick, ESPN won't go to commercial.
Hey, they had to stay this year because they knew they were taking Jaden Daniels.
Yeah, went to commercial on the second pick, but second rounder. But yeah, gee, we may actually get to see a pick live next year. So, man, it's good times are coming. That's for sure.
Sir.
But we got to be going, I guess.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm Rick Snyder.
I'm Matt.
We'll be back eventually. See you soon.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Seasons of Discontent with your hosts, Rick Snyder and Matt Combs.